former senior vice president of HR, and I quit my job and wound up being an executive and business coach, coaching people one-on-one, people growing companies just like you and others, and quickly realized that sort of everyone probably needs a coach, but coaching is out of reach for a lot of people. It's expensive. Fewer than about 2% of people ever get coaching in their career or executive coaching. So I put my life savings into founding a software company that's democratizing coaching, so everyone at work can feel powerful and own their careers and shape their experience at work. So the company I have is called Pilot, and it's an employee coaching software that companies, employers provide to their employees.
Did you have a software background? It seems like you were a very people person and everything like that, but was there a software background?
I've been sort of software curious and tech curious, and my last job actually in HR was actually building a lot of software. I wasn't an engineer, but I was deploying kind of an industry-leading internal social media network, and we were partnering with startups and doing kind of custom application, within our company. Won a lot of awards, and really kind of had me all of a sudden being a nobody in HR to a somebody. And at conferences, share who we met. I was, giving a keynote on a stage, and I'm on cover of HR Executive Magazine and these other things, and for a field that I didn't study in and didn't have much experience in, but that's where software came. And I started my career at Lockheed Martin, which writes more code than Microsoft. It's a big, giant software company, and so I learned a lot about software and being in the environment of and how products are designed and built from a software perspective. And so I've been around a lot of technology, but I've never been the owner of a company. I've never really worked at a company that's called like True Tech. Lockheed was more defense and aerospace and engineering versus pure software or tech.
Talk to me about when you decided, like, I'm going to step out. This is my thing. And some of the feelings that transpired, like, within you, whether it's complete and total confidence or I'm going to fail. I mean, talk to me about that journey.
So I never wanted to be an entrepreneur, nor did I ever plan to be an entrepreneur. So everyone's like, oh, well, tell me about your story when you decided to take the leap to be an entrepreneur and quit your job. And I'm like, well, those are actually different. They're not a collapsed moment. It wasn't like had job, quit, became an entrepreneur. It was had job, quit, got my bonus, took some time off, sort of discovered more about myself, like breathed a little bit from working like a dog for a long period of time, and then sort of stumbled into entrepreneurship. And it started in phases. So phase one was a coaching business, and I which I was extremely fearful about doing coaching because I was like, no one's going to hire me. I'm going to run out of money. I'm going to have to leave New York. And within a year and a half, I had a sold out practice. And which was to my surprise.
Don't you find that ironic that you were worried about coaching when a coach is supposed to just like lead the way?
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. It kind of like really tapped into my insecurities and scarcity and fears and all these things. And yet, it just showed up, right? To the point where I'm turning people away a year and a half later. And it started with, really low capital investment. I'm sort of a revenue first entrepreneur. So much of what I sort of despise in the press and the business press and tech press is it's entrepreneur porn around vanity metrics, fundraising, press, user acquisition, certain partnerships, which don't necessarily mean anything, right? And ultimately, the mark of a successful business is profit, right? That you manage it successfully, and that has a lot of implications, right? And it's not about necessarily making money, but it's saying like the health of the business. And rather than spending, it was funny. Everyone just talked to me about expenses, people and offices and websites and brands and this and all that stuff. And with coaching, I said like, I spent $88 on business cards from moo.com. And the logo conundrum and the colors conundrum and all that stuff on my coaching business, I just used their template. Didn't even have a logo. I just used their generic template, and this is a number of years ago, 6 years ago, so it wasn't even as good as they have now. So they looked like very fine. Yeah. They're just like, fine. Better probably than Vistaprint, but not much, Yeah. And $88, and everyone's like, well, what about your website? And I'm like, website sounds like a lot of work. And websites were not as easy to make as they are now. They didn't have the out-of-the-box Squarespace, Wix sort of things, right? And I just was like, I'm just going to go get customers, right? And customers, on referral and introduction and stuff like that. And I made over $100,000 on those $88 in business cards in a couple lunches, right? And then I only later, I think it was, I don't know how long it had been, a year and a half probably I'd been in business before I actually made a website.
At what point did you realize I need to stay focused on the business and not fall in love with the fact that I am a successful company right now because I have money?
Well, for me, what I quickly realized is I have a calendar, and one of the only fair things in life is we all have 24 hours in a day,
Yes.
including Beyonce, right? It was 24 hours, and the main reason I didn't work in a big company anymore, despite the fact that I was very successful in big companies, is impact. I just felt like I could actually, believe it or not, even though the senior vice president of a $5 billion company in 100 countries, I felt like I could have more impact, me, myself, and I as an individual outside of a company, which was surprising to me at first, but I found that to be true. And so here I'm making this money, but I thought, well, first of all, like if I'm not coaching people, I'm not making money. So this is sort of like a machine that's got to be on every day. But like more importantly, like the impact I have is stretched to my calendar. And I didn't really feel like I could duplicate myself out or scale myself out through other people, right, and become a professional services company. I'm like, I just don't know if I can create other coaches quite like me. I think I've got a unique set of gifts and talents and experiences that I'm not sure I can duplicate.
Yeah.
And then, but the bigger thing was like, okay, but like, how do we get coaching to more people? Because the things I'm talking about to my clients, sort of everyone needs to get, and everyone needs to hear, and not everyone can pay. The median cost of coaching in America is $500 an hour, right? Executive coach in New York City, like someone, it's like $750 an hour, like or more, right? So like that's high dollar. That's top 1 or 2% of income earners, or top 1 or 2% in the hierarchy inside of an organization that's getting that coaching. And that's where I was like, let me use coaching as this sort of like lab, what I do one-on-one, and then turn it into software. So Pilot's my second company.
Got it.
So the first company is my coaching company, which is a separate business entity, B2 Professional Services, separate website, everything else. But I use that and say, I'm just taking what I do here, and I'm just adding technology to it over here.
Software.
Well, and I learned in consulting. I was a management consultant in professional services business in general, advertising agency, law firm, management consulting. You either have too much business and not enough supply of people, or too many people and not enough business.
Yes.
And it's just a seesaw all the time. And all you're trying to do is, oh crap, we have a ton of people, we need to get more business, utilization is low. Okay, here's more business. Oh crap, we don't have enough people, go hire or bring on freelancers. Oh, we lost the account, oh, lay people off. And it's just this constant, all you do your entire life is that teeter-totter, that seesaw, and I was not gonna play that game. That's not what I wanted to do. And I also knew that if I created other coaches, it would be exclusionary in the fact that it'd be expensive.
Yes.
In fact, maybe even more expensive, because on top of paying them their market rate compensation, then I had overhead and I had my own company sort of, profit and expenses. So it probably would take the rate even higher, meaning fewer people could get access to it as we grew. So where I looked at technology was, okay, well, SaaS, software as a service, is sort of democratizing and making things more egalitarian in so many regards. And HR has been slow to adopt technology.
Yes.
And when it's come in, it's been, 85, 90% of venture capital that goes into HR for tech is recruiting. Despite the fact we've seen very little progress in recruiting in 20 years, it's basically the same as newspaper ads.
Why do you think that? Sorry, why are we not seeing progress in recruiting? And this is something I go on about all day. I just want to get your.
I mean, I have many smart thought leaders in this space around HR and tech and recruiting that would be more articulate than me that I could certainly refer you to. But I would say that my sort of observation is it's managing symptom, right? Which is I'm unhappy, I'm going to go somewhere else. And what it's not actually doing is helping people really figure out, from almost like a coaching or advisor perspective, what they're meant to do. Because algorithms are pattern recognition machine learning, right? Sees something, then it knows what to do, and it does that with it, right? And so it says you're in, you work at a bank, and you're, financial, analyst of some sort, and you're sick of that bank, and you're at bank A, and it helps you find a job at bank B doing the same job. That's what it does best. And so recruiting technology helps find people like for like jobs at competitors in the same industry.
Yes.
And many people are in the wrong jobs in the wrong industries, and there's no way for them to understand what they actually do need to do, or they're the wrong people when they show up, right? So the lookalike is basically recruiting and dating are the same. In terms of technology and how they monetize themselves.
Yes.
So I call it the recruiting industrial complex, which is a massive behemoth, which, by the way, there's an incentive for turnover, because every time someone turns over, recruiting machine makes money. The boards, the services, the background checks, the benefit stuff, all of that, right? So there's a high incentive, right, an aligned incentive for people to turn over, not to stay, right? There's not monetization that says, oh, based on the quality of hire and their retention, you'll get paid, which would be a smarter way, in my opinion, to monetize talent. Yeah. It's just butts in seats. Yeah. So then, oh, and that didn't work out? Oh, we get to make money again? So there's this sort of perversing, and then the same thing that got the butt from one seat to the other pulls that butt from that seat and takes them to seat C for another 15% raise because they got targeted on LinkedIn or whatever, right? So for me, I think that like it's very much swiping on Tinder is how we've sort of dumbed down career management to comp and title. And everyone is just like, next, who's the next person, who's the next person, who's the next person? And then we have high turnover, and no one really takes stock of like, well, what do I actually want, or what do I actually need, besides a title bump or a pay bump, right? And I realize pay, when you're at a low level of comp, it is a big, super important, right? But all the research says after a certain sort of median level of comp, that just doesn't add that much to your satisfaction or happiness, right? Now, if you can't pay for medicine for your kid, that's a different story, right? But if you're making, a healthy salary, it's not going to make that big of a difference. And so that's sort of my rant about recruiting. But there's a lot of wonderful people I know in recruiting, and I like in particular professional recruiters that I know that I think are fantastic. And there are some interesting things being explored and developed in recruiting, with whether that's through assessments or video stuff or different ways to kind of share more of yourself. So there's certainly people trying some innovative things, but if you talk to most job seekers and you talk to most hiring managers, right, or business owners, they have not seen much change in 20 years in the experience or process, despite the fact it's tens of billions of dollars are dumped in.
Yes. But what about the people that, for lack of a better phrase, bring the talent down because they do coaching as a side gig and they suck and they charge $100 an hour?
So there's a whole mix-up in coaching right now, and I know even in the last 3 months, I've had so many people reach out and say, I've decided I want to be a coach. And sort of like everyone wants to be a coach now. Some people probably could be great coaches, right? But one, although the coaching market is growing, I think it's growing like 20% sort of, per year, which is huge. There's still, it's a small market and a fixed sort of market. And you're seeing sort of the bastardization of coaching. Like we were talking to a company that's using our software recently, and they were like going to do these like 3 packs of coaching with different people, which is not coaching, right? Like you had coaching sessions, but it's like, it's not a punch card, right? It's not lattes or acupuncture or whatever. Like it's, coaching is, from my perspective, it's a sort of a, longitudinal, time-based relationship. Yeah. And with any behavior change, it takes time. So, a lot of employees, you kind of cheat them because they think, I'm going to sit with someone, they're going to tell me the answer, they're going to give me a plan, I'm going to go do it, which is not how careers happen, not how behavior change happens. Yes. And so now I see coaches online and a lot of online platforms where it's like, you can talk to someone, buy a session, buy a thing. And if that's a way to like get started and get them into a longer relationship, I understand that and how people sort of try before they buy and whatever. But that seems to be more like, oh, I have a coach. And then you're like, yeah, I meet with them twice a year or something. And I'm like, it's not really a coach. Maybe that's like an advisor or mentor. But like coaching is like, Serena Williams has a coach and she's not on the tennis court a day a year, right? And that's the reason she's a dominant star, right? Is because she gets a lot of coaching, right? And so when I see like this flood of people, and also it's kind of the new outplacement, I've been told, as a lot of people are saying, oh, I was a VP of treasury at a company, so now I'm going to be a coach for people in finance. Yes. But what they were probably a damn good VP of treasury, but they're a piss poor coach. In particular, if they don't get education or have the natural kind of aptitudes, or oftentimes they've never even had a coach themselves, right? That's something that definitely to be suspect. Is a lot of people don't ask that, but you should ask a coach if they had a coach, because if they hadn't, like next.
Why is it 2%, and why do people suck up their pride and not want the help?
Well, it's interesting. Even the 2% that get it, if you talk to coaches who work with larger companies, whether it's paid for by the company and things. In my experience and the experience of a lot of other coaches, that like the flake rate on like people not showing up to a session, having to leave a half hour early, not doing their work, needing to reschedule a ton of times is very high. So even the people that get coaching aren't necessarily always using coaching. So the actual percentage of people actually being coached effectively is probably less than 2, right? And so first, structural is money. It's expensive, right? So if you think about like that $500 an hour, according to Harvard Business School, that's the median cost of an executive coach in America. And that was as of like 3 years ago, so it's probably gone up, right? And you don't buy an hour from a coach. A good coach is going to say, hey, it's going to be 20 sessions, right? So then it's 10 grand, right? And then that's the commitment up front. Well, that's a lot of money. So first there's the economic hurdle, right? Second is coaching is delivered in a method that's sort of antiquated in the fact that it's, someone you're talking to me on, and now like it's innovative because it's like over video and you can video call. Well, sure, like, and I've coached people over video too, and that's fine, but it's still the same thing, which is basically it's an hour of time. You're face-to-face or video-to-video, but it's banker's hours. I don't coach people at 10 o'clock at night. Yeah. I don't coach people on Saturday afternoons, right? And most, top-tier sort of executive coaches work banker's hours. The best coaches don't work on those other hours typically. Some people have different lifestyle constructs and they like doing that, or that works for them, and that's awesome. I think that's a market opportunity for certain people. Yeah. But, so you coach during these rigid times that are high opportunity cost times, because for a high performer, banker's hours are times that you're selling, you're coding, you're interviewing, you're delivering, you're leading, you're financing, whatever the thing you do is, you're having to take away time to go get coaching to do that. And you're forcing them the context switch in the middle of the day. In context switching, each time you go from one thing to another, it takes 25 minutes for your brain to reset. Part of the reason people are exhausted is they're just going from ping to ping to ping, and they never get into flow, right? Wow. If you talk about authors that ever write a book and they're effective, there are no alerts, the phone is down, no one can interrupt them, they just do one thing, right? And that's how you beast out a book. Wow. Or that's how great programmers code, right? It's how great video editors go through things, That's how great artists get paintings made, And they monotask, they do one thing. Well, coaching has you, in the middle of the day, you're having to, context switch. And the third thing is it's often too much medicine for the patient. Now, you and your wife, you have a military background, you served our country, you're doing something now totally different. This is not what you did in the military,
no.
Right? Like, you're using different equipment,
yes.
right? And there's different asset management and different things like that, and you're thinking in a totally different paradigm, right? And so, and you're managing a business, and you're, partnering with this WeWork thing, and you got these other ideas, and so you have a lot of complexity to handle, and a lot of things that I would say are sort of like unstructured and ambiguous. Yes. So a individual coach is going to be better for you, right? Because you have a lot of, but the average employee doesn't have that. The average employee has a job, and they have a pretty common kind of 80-20 set of issues and challenges and opportunities. And so like with my company, the reason we're able to do it through software is our software can't solve for every permutation that you have. You would not be our customer, right? Our software is for when MetLife is our biggest customer. And they've got, sales, brokers, and they've got people in leadership and people in their learning function and marketing, others, Aon or CBS or Thomson Reuters, Pandora Radio, all these companies we work with. And they have great, stunning, amazing people that do very meaningful work. Yep. But what they really need to manage are some pretty common things, right? They need to manage how they use their time. They need to manage what their unmet needs were. You talked about unmet needs earlier. They need to identify what those are and do something about it. They need to manage their relationship with their manager and to make them successful, treat them like a customer, and own their supervision, and manage up, and lean into their preferences and style, and have empathy for them as a person. They need to be effective at solving problems. Almost every job today is a problem-solving job, and no one is taught how to solve problems effectively. Generally, the STEM industries and academic disciplines teach you a very structured way. It can be extremely amazing. But outside of that, often not. Military does a pretty good job of solving problems because of the situational adaptation, given the kind of dynamic environments that our service members are in. And then you think about, like, how do you actually interact on a team, and what's your role, and how do you disclose that and come up with that, or how do you use technology to manage relationships? Like, no one's talking about that's in our coaching product, but like that's the thing that everyone's deals. Feedback is on every engagement survey. I want more feedback. Well, here's the problem. People expect feedback to land on their desk. They expect it to come from their manager. They expect it to be part of a formal system, and then they confuse it with critical developmental feedback, affirmation and recognition, or confirmation of status. And those are three different things. If you're looking for affirmation and someone gives you critical feedback, you're going to be really upset. Yeah. And so, and thinking about their career as a portfolio and other things they can do inside and outside of their firm, right? In the community, right? In their association, industries, whatever it may be, functions. And so that's where we look at the approach and say, for coaching, most people go to a coach, and that's why maybe 2 or 3 sessions is fine, because they just want to talk about a couple things and that's it. But sometimes you have people do what I call they reach for their dessert and not their vegetables, right? And what they want to talk about isn't what they necessarily need to talk about, right? And that's why a good coach, if you go to Barry's boot camp or do something else, they're not like, hey, what would you like to work on today? They're like, get down and do push-ups.
Because you have software associated, are you able to avoid these kinds of things? And it's just a better, I really believe customer experience is always number one, but like your experience has to be good too. So when those people get those calls like, hey, I didn't do this, or I got to cancel, it's just like you're less invested in the relationship. So did that play any part into the software?
Yeah, one of the things we look at is a measure the efficacy of our software is participation and engagement with it. Yeah. So, the thing about the gym is if you go, it works. And having a gym membership isn't enough. You actually have to get your ass to the gym. Mm-hmm. So coaching is the same way. Hiring a coach. That's what I had to screen early on in my coaching practice. I would get clients that would buy coaching and not use it. Yeah. And not use it like either not show up or not be coachable.
How do you not take that person?
So I had to my bigger thing was how do I screen that person out? And I had some clients that I had to fire, and then I screen ahead of it rather than me have to deal with it much. It's like, this isn't what I'm up for. If I was a surgeon, I wouldn't walk into an operating room and have people I don't want surgery. I'd be like, screw you, let's not have people in the operating room that don't want to have surgery, right? This is what I do, right? If you don't want that, that's fine, but this is what I do. So when you talk about behavior change and you talk about sort of a psychological contract, there's a variety of things we do in our software to make to make it effective and have people actually use it. And if you look at completion rates of online courses,
it's very low.
Less than 1%. And if you look at talent development programs online, the completion rate is more like 5 to 8% total. And our completion rate is about 80% over a 52-week program. Now, how do we get that? First of all, we have an advantage of pre-selecting. Employees don't give our product to their worst people.
Yes.
They invest in their best, which is rare because a lot of times, the worst employees get the most attention and the most money and the most whatever. Yeah. And we say, hey, if you're picking stocks, don't pick losers, pick winners, right? Let them fall off the vine, the bad ones. Focus on the winners, right? Because, a high performer can have 10x performance of a low performer. And so first we have a predisposed group of people that then we psychologically contract with them. Here's what we're expecting. Are you opting into this? Here's what you're going to get out of it, because most talent programs that are sold and things that are sold in HR are marketed to the person buying them and writing the check, not the person using them. Yes. So we actually started as a direct-to-consumer company, and so that's the brand stuff, that's all the other things. So when we design something in our product, it has to be equally compelling to the buyer and the member, or an end user. We call it member. We hate the term user. So buyer and member. And so it's like, do they care and do they care? Yep. So it's relevant things where there's a clear what's in it for me, a WIFM for both parties, right? Then we take, if you think of change management and you think people are at point A and you want to get them to point B, well, the first thing you do is you assume good intent and you take all the barriers out of the way, the things that would get in the way. So that's friction. So friction is what? Is it on mobile? No, friction. Do I have to be on VPN? Friction. Is it buried 18 clicks into the intranet? Friction. Do I don't know what my password is? Friction. So our product is a frictionless product. People use it on any device, no software installed, doesn't matter what operating system, through text message and email, no credentials to log in, works anytime, works anywhere, right? Yeah. So we take the barriers out of the way, and we hold people accountable. So if they don't do it, we let them know that we're watching them. So the Hawthorne effect, right, says just merely by people knowing their performance is being observed, it increases the performance. So there's a study in 1940s of, if they change the lighting in a factory, if people would be more productive. And just by having people with clipboards watching them, performance goes up, right? So they know that we're watching them, right? And our team texts them, emails them, and calls them on a weekly basis if they're behind. And we have incentives to get caught back up, and we're trying to get power. And this is not something we've completely figured out by any means. This is a growing experiment because I want to get that 80% number. One, I want to sustain that number as we grow, because it could actually degrade, and I want to increase that number, right? Mm-hmm. And so then it's part of that commitment. And then the other thing is we just really sell them on the excitement and how special it is to be invested in. Employees are always bitching about not having enough development and their companies don't care for them and all that. And then they get to say, okay, here's the thing. Your company has actually heard you and they're doing something about it. Take advantage of it. And we make them feel guilty if they don't, right? And we start with, and we also make it fun. The first thing you do with a pilot is we make a playlist and we text everyone. We say, hey, what's your work jam? What's the song that gets you jacked up and gets you to get all this work done? And people go nuts and they're like blasting back all, and it's like everything from like super explicit songs, we have to find a non-explicit version, to like Taylor Swift or something in between, and I'm like, and so, but it's whatever it is, right? And it's part of diversity and self-expression. And we put together a Spotify playlist for that cohort. And that's the first thing. So we add just a little levity and fun where they're like, oh, this isn't gonna suck, or this is like kind of refreshing or kind of fun. And and we get into, again, those practical sort of things. But that's where I look at it as our job. We're fundamentally, we may be an HR technology company, it's a coaching product, but fundamentally, if you were to say like, fundamentally, what are we doing? It's behavior change. So it's in service of maximizing potential.
Yes.
Traditional talent matrix is performance and potential. When you evaluate talent, everything in the market's performance. It's all about performance. Most of it, by the way, doesn't work very well, and employees and managers hate it. But nothing's in the potential space.
Yep.
So we're on the potential axis, right? I think it has a performance impact as a secondary impact, but ultimately it's to change behavior. Well, if people don't go to the gym, they don't get the results. So we actually, rather than just say, well, the people that show up, they're gonna get a great workout, we actually look at it as our responsibility to get them to the gym.
Yep.
And to have them have a great workout. And if you look at people in like public health and that do case management and people that are in education and helping underserved communities and marginalized populations, they look at the same way. They take a sense of total responsibility and wrap around the needs of that client or that patient completely, right? So you may be managing, let's say, HIV in the community, right? And you think, oh, let's get them the medication to manage their HIV and the thing. But maybe what they need is actually the bus ticket, and the bus pass to get to the doctor's office, to do the blood work, right? Or maybe they need someone to give the medication every day because they don't have stable housing. And they don't even have a place to keep the medication, right? Or they're chemically dependent and they might sell it on the black market on the street. So you have to look at it in these sort of like non-logical but highly humanistic and related ways of like, what does that take? And so I would say that we are just getting started in figuring that out. I would say while we're industry leading, the bar is extremely low. On Net Promoter Score, the range of scores is -100 to 100, and it's answering the question, how likely would you be to recommend this product to a friend or colleague? And so a 0 is generally a good score, right? USAA, a bank I'm sure you're familiar with, is got one of the highest NPSs, and it's in the mid 60s because it's just like you said, like you'd recommend it, right?
Customer service is just it's
awesome,
it's,
right?
I mean, they always just talk to me for a little bit. And
Totally.
I was like, thank you.
They're human, right?
Like unbelievable. They have that nailed.
So they're in the 60s, right? And that's where they're at. The talent management average for talent management software is -57, okay? That's how bad the software is that's out there. We're consistently scoring about 80. So between 60 and 80. Now again, early on, a lot of excitement, so we gotta protect and keep that, right? But it's also that psyche is like they value it, right? It's something that they want and they appreciate. And we talked to a new customer yesterday and they were like, well, should we like require this or whatever? And I'm like, if something is compulsory, it sucks. I have to take out the trash, I have to floss, I have to pay my taxes. It sort of sucks. You still have to do all those things generally, but if something is compelling, you want to do it, and it's in a totally different part of your brain. So I said, let's not make it compulsory, let's make it compelling. Let's, though, have people opt in and commit, right? Rather than have it be compulsory, have it be a committed thing and say, by the way, if you do this, we expect you to do this. And if you don't, we may pull you out. And we use loss aversion is another way, because people are really motivated. Like they don't want to lose that thing, right? So they say, hey, like, you're behind, like, let's get you caught up or whatever. But by the way, if you're just going to like ghost or check out, we'll pull you out of the coaching cohort. You'll lose the coaching.
Oh, got it. I'm just like hearing that. I would be like, no.
No, don't take that. That's I want that. I swear to God, I'll do it today. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to binge it. I'm going to do it all. And we have people do that, right? Yeah. And not as a threat, but just to say that there are consequences if you don't honor your word and meet your commitment. Yeah. And again, this is completely foreign to how most HR and talent programs are run. So the socialism of HR is everyone gets everything. There's no segmentation or gradation. Everyone's the same, which is just not true. Employees in a room know that some people are higher performers and harder working and more talented than others, right? And that's okay, right? A baseball team pays players differently, right? And that's okay, right? And so that's where we're trying to take some different approaches. And so when I share all this, we're in a place of learning. We figured some things out, but we have more to figure out than we figured out.